Foam rolling, or myofascial release, is one of the most beneficial things you can do to improve your flexibility and mobility. So in this video, I'm going to show you 3 of the most common tight areas on the body and how to foam roll those to improve your flexibility and mobility for calisthenics. Hey everybody, I'm Ryan and this is Minus the Gym, where we talk about how to get fit and healthy at home. And in this video, we're looking at foam rolling. And before we dive in and I show you all the demonstrations, I just want to explain why foam rolling is so beneficial. In your body, you have this spongy white connective tissue called fascia. Alright, and to get an idea of what fascia really is, if you've ever peeled an orange or a grapefruit, you know that pith, like that spongy white stuff underneath the peel? That's basically what your fascia is. It's a spongy white connective tissue underneath your skin that encapsulates all of your muscles and your bones and other things. And what happens is, due to overuse of muscles or trauma to the muscle, you can actually get adhesions in the fascia. These adhesions, or knots as we often call them, restrict movement and blood flow. Now obviously restricting movement is a bad thing because you want to have good mobility in order to do the exercises correctly. But also keep in mind that restricting blood flow is a bad thing as well, because blood carries nutrients for recovery and it carries oxygen for aerobic exercise. So by foam rolling and addressing these adhesions, breaking up the knots, getting the blood flow there, you're going to also improve your performance and your recovery from your workouts.
First, we'll look at the hamstrings and how to foam roll those. Start off by positioning your foam roller next to you and then sitting on it so it's resting directly beneath your butt, and then with your hands behind you, pull back so that now the foam roller is beneath your hamstrings. Using your hands on the floor behind you, you're going to pull and push to roll your hamstrings, covering the entire area from just above the knee to just below the glutes. Doing these long strides are going to help you identify any really painful spots. Those are the adhesions that you'll want to work on. Also, for the men doing this, just be mindful because the family jewels can get in the way, so be careful. When you've identified some adhesions to work on, what I typically do is fold one leg over the other. So here I got my left leg folded over my right, and now I'm leaning my weight onto that right side and rolling only the hamstring of the right leg. This allows you to roll one side with a lot more focus, and when you find an adhesion, stop and then roll back and forth in a very short motion, just a few inches. I'm rolling back and forth right here. This allows you to really focus on the knot, drawing blood to it, and that'll help with the healing. I also like to stop and just sort of rest there. That's another way to really focus on a specific adhesion. So you might be wondering, how long do I foam roll for? Well, I recommend minimally 1 minute. All right, so I'm saying at least 60 seconds on every muscle group. And that's minimal. Sometimes if it's really bad, I'll foam roll for 3 to 5 minutes per muscle. It all depends on how tight I am. And of course, make sure you switch sides. So you can see here now I'm folding the right leg over my left and doing the same thing on the left, focusing on all the adhesions and spending minimally 60 seconds foam rolling that side. Aside from foam rolling daily, you'll also want to stretch. And here's a good stretch for the hamstrings. Keeping your back nice and flat, knees only slightly bent, fold forward, bending at the hips like this, feeling a nice deep stretch in the hamstrings on the back of your thighs. Now, once you're sunken into this stretch, you can sink even further by flexing at the spine. Make sure you don't change your pelvic positioning. Just curve at the spine in the upper back and reach down towards the ground. Try to get it to the point where you can touch your toes. And once you get there, you can actually lift up on your toes to sink even deeper into the stretch. Next, we'll look at the hip flexors, which are a group of muscles deep around your pelvis and in your thighs. In order to roll the hip flexors, it's going to look like we're rolling our quads, but we're actually going to externally rotate one leg, like this. This will allow us to hit the muscles on the inner thigh, like the sartorius, rectus femoris, adductors, pectineus. These are all part of the hip flexors, plus the iliopsoas and the TFL right at the top of the quads where it meets the pelvis. So to foam roll the hip flexors, you're going to lay your thighs, the front of your thighs, on the foam roller. Notice that I'm externally rotating one leg, my left leg right here. I'm then going to shift my weight slightly onto that left leg so the inner thigh of the left leg is really feeling the pressure, and then using my elbows, pull myself forward and push myself back to roll the inner thigh. Try to roll down towards the knee all the way up towards the pelvis. Again, you want to start off with long strides like this so you can identify any adhesions, and then as you identify the knots, you want to stop and focus on them by rolling back and forth in a rather fast and small motion, as well as stopping and resting on the adhesion as well. Additionally, you'll want to work on the very top of the thigh where it meets the pelvis, and to do this, we straighten the left leg and we rotate internally slightly, and then roll the very top of the thigh where it meets the pelvis. Rolling this area at the top of the front thigh, as well as even onto the pelvis, is going to help you hit the TFL and the iliopsoas, which are also part of the hip flexors. And of course, since we're focusing on one side at a time, we're going to turn around then to focus on the right leg, externally rotating that right leg, focusing on the inner thigh again. And guys, remember I always say 60 seconds minimally, so you're going to do 60 seconds or more per side for each muscle group. And that includes another minute or more focusing on the top of the thigh by straightening the leg and rotating internally for the TFL and the iliopsoas. For individuals who lack the flexibility to really dig in for the hip flexors, there's also a tool like this. It's a handheld muscle roller. And what you can do is you can pick up one of these and hold the handles on each side, and then go ahead and in a sitting position externally rotate one leg and then roll the inside of your thighs to really hit the hip flexors. What's nice about this is instead of manipulating gravity to roll, you're instead just using your upper body strength. The downside to that, of course, is that you're spending some of your upper body strength to roll and massage your lower body, but again, this is a handy tool for anyone who lacks the flexibility and mobility to properly foam roll. So check that out if it sounds like it might be beneficial to you. And in addition to rolling the hip flexors, you'll want to stretch them daily as well by stepping back into a lunge, just like this, and then moving your back so it's upright. You should feel a pretty good stretch in this case, the right side, because my right leg is back. But if you don't feel a stretch, go ahead and raise that right arm up overhead. Raising the arm will intensify the stretch in your hip flexors. And if you need to intensify it even more, you can lean your torso in the direction of your front leg, which would be the left leg in this case. And remember to do this stretch for both sides as well. And lastly, we'll look at the lats. This was a really tight area for me and held me back on handstands. So sit next to your foam roller and then extend one arm behind it as you lay on your side. The roller should be positioned at the top of the side of your back, right at the top of your lat beneath your armpit. Now notice that I have one foot flat on the floor with my knee bent for that leg. And that's because you're going to use that foot to pull and push yourself so that you can roll your lat. As always, start off with long strides, rolling from the insertion point, which is just below the armpit, all the way down to the origin around the ribs, okay, the bottom of your rib cage. And as always, when you find an adhesion or a painful spot, roll back and forth in a small motion. Don't forget to turn around as well so you can roll the other side. So I was doing my right side and now I'll be rolling my left, having one leg bent with the foot flat on the floor, using that to push and pull and roll myself. And like I mentioned before, at least a minute per side, but I've gone as much as 5 minutes. Now a good stretch for the lats that I like to use is child's pose from yoga. While kneeling, just reach out in front of yourself and then kind of dip your butt down to the heels. You'll feel a nice stretch in the lats as you try to lower your head down towards the floor. There are many other lat stretches you can do, but they require holding onto objects or using door frames. What I really like about child's pose is that you can do it anywhere and you're relying on gravity. So once you get into the position, you can just relax and let your body sink, and gravity does the work for you. Your end goal with child's pose should be to let your head, specifically your face, like your nose, sink all the way down to touch the floor. And it's hard to see here, but the grass blades are actually up in my nose and mouth.
Okay, so we talked about tightness in the hamstrings, the hip flexors, and the lats. Remember, by improving flexibility and mobility in the hamstrings, it's going to help with your pike. That really lends to the L-sit, the V-sit, handstand presses and moves like that. By improving the hip flexors, you're going to see improvement in your form on pretty much every lower body exercise there is. And by improving the lats, you're going to get better overhead movement when you raise your arms overhead for handstand and overhead pressing. If you found this video helpful, please make sure to give it a like. That really helps me out. Maybe share it on social media too. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel, Minus the Gym. All right? And I will see you in the next one.